Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are looking at the Ensign from February 1982. And this article is entitled Elder Neal A. Maxwell, An Understanding Heart by Bruce C. Hafen, who I believe was a General Authority 70. Anyway, Neal A. Maxwell, what do I know about him? So Neal A. Maxwell was also alive during my time. I believe he died in 2004, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember him specifically because he had very beautiful language. He was able to use language in such a way that just absolutely was poetic. It was so beautiful. The way that he would give talks, which were super complex linguistically. And to be honest, I don't know a lot about him as a person and what he did in his life. So I'll be interested to find out more about him, but I do remember him as a general authority being very, very poetic in his speech and very able to convey very precisely what he wanted to say, and in the most beautiful way possible. Like, it was just a linguistic masterpiece, every single talk. So if you're ever in the mood for something that is just beautiful to listen to some older Neal A. Maxwell talks. It's amazing. Anyways, so let's find out more about him. I do happen to know that he died of cancer because he wasn't that old. I don't remember exactly how old he was, but I do remember that it not a surprise, but like not really expected either. I feel like when he passed away, it was one of those like, wait, he passed away? Like, I thought he was doing okay. No, he had leukemia, I'm fairly certain, and I think that's what killed him eventually. And he lived with it for a long time. Like, people thought that he was gonna be okay, maybe. He had it for like 7 years or something. But, it really depends on how bad it is. But I'm fairly certain that that's what killed him. But let's take a look at the article and see if we can find out more about him as a person. Yes? So, I'm excited. In one of the most stirring invitations in all recorded scripture, Moroni entreats us to pray unto the Father with all the energy of heart that ye may be filled with what Paul and Moroni considered the greatest of the spiritual gifts, charity, the pure love of Christ, the love that Christ himself had for the children of men. Moroni pleads with us to understand that this gift is worth a lifelong quest, for whoso is found possessed of it, it shall be well with him. Moroni 7:47-48 and Ether 12:34. Yeah, okay. In the life of Elder Neal A. Maxwell, the long and difficult search is being fulfilled. As well it should be, since no one can assist in this work, except he shall be humble and full of love, having faith, hope, and charity. Doctrine and Covenants 12:8. Giving full due to his stature as an educator, an administrator, a writer, and a political scientist, it is the spiritual maturing of a charitable heart that best characterizes the course of his personal development. Okay. Well, that's cool. I would hope somebody would say that about me, That's something that I feel like everyone aspires to. In the spring of 1920, 18-year-old Clarence Maxwell moved with his parents from Bozeman, Montana to Salt Lake City, Utah. Okay, the Maxwells were not members of the church, really? On a chilly January morning 2 years later, Clarence met a young man about his age named George Flinders, while the two were waiting for a trolley car. After a brief conversation, George invited Clarence to attend mutual with him that evening in the nearby Windermere Ward Chapel. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Because the young lady Clarence had been dating had recently sent word via her mother that she was no longer interested in me. As Clarence later told the story, his evenings were free. And so he went with George to mutual, where the M-Men group he visited promptly elected him class secretary, it being the first of the year, and they were electing officers. This is such a funny story. This is his father? Oh gosh. This is so funny. Like, so this is how his father found the church, yeah? It was... Can you imagine going to, like, a young men's meeting, and then the first time ever, this is your first encounter with the church, and then they're like, you're gonna be secretary, okay? Wait, what? Oh, you just came with my friend, you know? Within a month, Clarence met Emma Ashe at a ward Valentine's Day dance, and shortly thereafter commenced going steady with her. Cute. He joined the church the following June. Shocker. Then married Emma in the Salt Lake Temple after another few months. Cool, cool. I'm a little bit surprised because I thought that they had a rule that you couldn't marry or get your endowments in the temple until you'd been a member for like a year, but maybe that wasn't the rule back then. Yeah, so that might have not been in the case in 1926. Is that what I'm seeing? Something like that. Anyway, in the 1920s. 3 years later, on July 6, 1926. Okay, that's so they were married in 1923, yeah? Emma bore a son, whom they named Neal Ashe Maxwell. Okay, that's where he got his middle name, Ashe, because that was his mother's maiden name. Not a surprise, I feel like a lot of the men that we've been talking about recently had that incur. Over half a century later, Clarence wondered aloud why his parents had decided to move to Utah, and why in the course of 1 year had they made 4 moves to different homes in Salt Lake City, until finally arriving in the Windermere ward. His feeling that God had directed these events was confirmed later when our son Neal was told in his patriarchal blessing, "Your line of descent has been prepared beforehand." On 6 April 1974, Elder Neal A. Maxwell stood before a general conference of the church, newly sustained as an assistant to the 12, to express appreciation for humble parents who both told and showed me that the gospel and church are true. Okay, that's cool. Last October, Elder Maxwell again stood before the membership of the church to be sustained as a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. So this article came out shortly after his call to the Quorum of the 12. All right, there's a lot of pictures that I missed. That's why it took me so long to scroll down. But let's go back up, yeah? Okay, early photo of the parents of Elder Maxwell. Emma Ashe and Clarence Maxwell both told and showed me the way. Oh, he looks a lot like his father. Holy cow. He doesn't look like his mother almost at all. Okay, interesting. Okay, so this is a portrait of him, Neal A. Maxwell. I think that this is kind of a classic portrait. I like the vest, you know? It looks very dressed up. He looks very dressy in that outfit. In front of the scriptures, of course. He was very much a scriptorian, so... All right, here's some more pictures, though. Top left, as a primary youth. Okay, primary youth, like how old are we talking? 6, 8, something like that. Anyway, above, happily displaying over 90 ribbons earned in a 4-H pig raising project. I'm sorry, this is very foreign to me. 4-H pig raising project. I know nothing about 4-H. I know nothing about pig raising, and I have no idea what all the ribbons are for. Are those for different animals that got ribbons? Or are they for like different like competitions you entered? I'm not sure. Maybe a combination of the two. I'm not sure. Anyway, so congratulations, I guess. I mean, he was clearly proud of it, and that's obviously an accomplishment, or they wouldn't make ribbons for it, yes? So good job. Interesting. In 1942, about 16 years old. He does not look 16. I'm sorry, I have this issue every time they show a picture of a young man. I always think that they're younger than they are. I'm not sure why that is, but he looks 13 maybe? I don't know. And then the high school student. Okay, he looks like a high school student. 15 maybe? 16? Yeah, anyway. All right, moving back on. How that we got through all the pictures. Neal Maxwell grew up in Salt Lake City with the boy's usual fears and aspirations, and yet somehow won pig raising awards, which makes me think that he didn't live in the city. I'm not sure. That's a little bit of a contradiction, is it not? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that was perfectly normal back then, but like, seems a little weird to me today, but hey. Right. With the boy's usual fears and aspirations. See? Now, I criticized this turn of phrase in another article that I read, because what do you mean usual? Like list one or two, you know? Don't just be like, oh yeah, I had the usual experiences. What do you mean by that? What does that mean? Define it. Anyway, he loved athletics and developed early skill as a basketball player. See, there you go. That was specifics. I like it. But by the time Neal entered Granite High School, his friends had suddenly grown enough taller that he failed to make the basketball team. Yeah, he wasn't particularly tall, was it? Interesting that he went to Granite High School. Do you know how many people did? Like, this seems like a lot. Also, a lot of people who were teaching taught at Granite High School. Like, I feel like we've mentioned it probably 6 or 7 times at least. Also, home of the first release time seminary. Yeah, I believe first seminary at all. By then, he had also developed a serious case of acne, the scars of which he still carries. Okay, I had noticed that he had some scarring on his face, but I wasn't sure what it was from. Acne, huh? I feel like it's a bit, I don't know, superficial to mention it in this article. Oh yeah, and he has acne scars, you know? I mean, does that contribute to his character? Because I don't think it does. Lots of people have acne. Lots of people have acne scars. Like, I don't know. It's a little bit of skin texture is all. By nature shy and sensitive, Neal experienced additional social discomfort during his high school years. His family home was very modest, and he raised pigs as a 4-H project. Yeah, they did mention that. His work with the pigs occasionally made him the object of stinging remarks from his friends. Oh, that does make sense, yeah. These minor bruises to his feelings as a young man would later help bless him with a keen sense of empathy for others. Okay, that's not usually the direction it goes. God, like how many people who are bullied end up being deeply empathetic with other people? Usually it just turns you into a bully. So this was kind of a fortunate turn of events that that's not what happened, but yeah, I don't recommend this method of teaching people empathy. I'm just saying. Neal's first experience with the world of arts and letters did little to bolster his shaky self-confidence. Really? His high school English teacher gave him a D-. Whoa! Considering what a wordsmith he is, that's shocking to me. When he protested, she said, Neal, you are capable of doing A work. Until you do, you will continue to get D-. Whoa! Oh my god, wait. So you're saying he did probably C level work? Yeah, which is average. It's not terrible, but it's not fantastic either. And she gave him a D- just to motivate him to do better work, because she knew that he was capable of more. Okay, that does explain that a little bit. Shocked into action, he responded with an intensity that led to A's in English and a job as co-editor of the school paper. Makes perfect sense to me. More significantly, he began an adventure with the world of words that was to become a great source of satisfaction to him and service to others. I agree. I feel like that was his greatest strength. I mean, that I'm aware of, obviously. He may have had others. After 2 years within the Army Infantry, which included fighting in 1945 on Okinawa, yeah, everybody went to war back then, Elder Maxwell was served a mission to Canada. Oh, served. Sorry. Elder Maxwell served a mission to Canada. I was like, wait a second, was served? That doesn't make sense. No, it's not what it says. It says served mission. My bad. Helping maintain his sense of realism, the Maxwell children occasionally reminded their father that on a mission he baptized 2 people and excommunicated 4 in one branch for a net loss of 2. Okay, I would never criticize a leader for excommunicating someone. This is actually a good thing. Okay, number 1, that there are rules. Number 2, that there are consequences for breaking rules. Yeah, number 3, that there are people who are overseeing this and are willing to step up and call people out who are breaking rules and enforce consequences. Yes, these are all good things. That is not a negative thing that he excommunicated 4 people. I mean, did he do it personally, or did he just recommend them to be excommunicated? Because today it would be more of a recommendation for the missionary, but not something that they did themselves. Anyway, excommunication is a big deal. It's not done by missionaries, at least not today. But yeah, I would never criticize him for having excommunicated 4 people. Yeah. Anyway, Neal majored in political science at the University of Utah. He then worked in Washington, D.C. as a legislative assistant to Utah Senator Wallace F. Bennett. Interesting. I had no idea he was so involved in politics. Interesting. I honestly thought he must have done something with literature. I was thinking like professor of literature, university level, but interesting. Or maybe poetry. Yeah. In 1956, he returned to the University of Utah, where he successively worked at a wide variety of faculty and administrative jobs. See, that's more what I thought he did. From the Public Relations Office to Dean of Students to Executive Vice President. Okay, I wasn't actually thinking leadership, but that is interesting. It didn't sound like he actually ever taught. Huh. So he worked in administration of the college. Okay. During this time, he completed his MS in political science and taught enough to be selected by a group of university students as their favorite professor. Okay, so he did teach. Okay. He taught political science. He also served as the bishop of a student ward. In that role, he spent many hours counseling young people struggling with both intellectual and behavioral problems. From these experiences, Bishop Maxwell developed a resolve to help that has since borne valuable fruit as he has counseled LDS students and scholars to grow in spiritual as well as intellectual maturity. Intellectual and behavioral problems sounds more like working with people with disabilities, yeah? Like some sort of intellectual or cognitive disability, yeah? So it's a weird way of wording it. I'm not sure that that's really what they mean. Because most students at the university level do not really struggle with either intellectual nor behavioral problems. I'm just saying. Most people, most of the time, if you have reached college age and have decided to attend college, you're not struggling with intellectual problems. You're not struggling with behavioral problems. First of all, you're an adult, so you're acting like an adult. At least I would hope so. But, with a few forays into immaturity, but whatever. And also is that if you had the grades to be able to go to college, you're not struggling intellectually. I'm just saying, I don't know. By that point, you've weeded out the people who do struggle with these kind of behaviors. Because if somebody truly had an intellectual disability, they wouldn't be able to attend college. And ditto with behavioral problems. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. I don't understand this sentence of counseling young people struggling with both intellectual and behavioral problems. What I think they mean is people with academic problems, struggling with their grades. Behavioral, yeah, okay, there are some young people who do really silly things. But at the same time, I don't think that's really what they mean. Behavioral problems makes it sound like people are struggling with with some sort of disability. I don't know. I'm guessing that they mean is children acting out, young. I mean, they're not children anymore. They're young adults, but young adults acting like children. Yeah? Put it that way. All right, we're moving on because that one irritated me enough and I think I've gone into way too much depth. I may cut out half of that, but It's okay. During the latter part of his University of Utah service, Brother Maxwell worked as the university's liaison with the Utah legislature. This association led to his being one of the prime movers in establishing the Utah system of higher education, on whose Board of Regents he now serves. Nice! He also represented the university in some of its contacts with the leadership of the church. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, that's how he came under the radar of the general authorities, yes? Interesting. Okay, so he, because of his background in politics, he was also a liaison of the university with all leadership in general. So not only the legislature, but also the general authorities of the church. Okay, by the late 1960s, Neal A. Maxwell had become an articulate and effective spokesman in Utah, both for higher education and for the church. After serving on the YMMIA General Board, that's the Young Men's Mutual Improvement Association, as a member of the church's leadership committee, he was called in 1967 as one of the original regional representatives of the 12. Interesting. Because that's not even a thing anymore, I don't think. Or is it? Yeah? Let me know. During this time, he was associated on a number of church and civic matters with Elder Harold B. Lee, with whom he developed a relationship of mutual trust and thorough communication. Okay, that makes sense. All right. In early 1970, President David O. McKay passed away, bringing to an end 20 years of illustrious leadership. During the time of President McKay's presidency, church membership had nearly tripled, from about 1 million to about 3 million. Large segments of that growth came outside the United States and among the college-age population. Growth and internalization had quickly emerged as the church's primary challenges as the decade of the 1970s began. President Harold B. Lee became a counselor to President Joseph Fielding Smith, and then succeeded President Smith in 1972. President Lee was thus a leading figure in a general re-examination by the church of its structure and its programs in the early 1970s. The educational system of the church came under President Lee's searching scrutiny as part of that process. It was a natural time to re-examine the future of church education. I don't know where they're going with this, but this is interesting. BYU had reached its enrollment ceiling of 25,000. 25,000. I think that more students attend BYU now than 25,000. 35,000. Yeah, there's apparently closer to 35,000 now. Okay, well that would make sense. Since the 1970s it had a cap of 25,000 and now it's 35. Yeah. Ernest L. Wilkinson, who had been serving both as president of BYU and as chancellor of the church school system, had reached retirement age, as had other key figures in the educational system. The seminaries and institutes were experiencing enormous growth, and responding to the worldwide needs for education among church members loomed as a gigantic task. The response of the first presidency was to reestablish the position of Commissioner of Education, a post that in earlier years had been held by such leaders as David O. McKay and Adam S. Benyon. They were both teachers, yeah? Both of them. So, I mean, of course they would want to be Commissioner of Education. You know what I mean? Anyway. In June 1970, Elder Neal A. Maxwell was appointed commissioner, with a charge to breathe new vitality, vision, and organizational unity into the far-flung educational interests of the church. Neal A. Maxwell not only enjoyed the confidence of the First Presidency and the Church Board of Education, he was also known and respected in the church's educational community. As Commissioner of Education, he quickly established himself as something of an interpreter between that community and the leadership of the church, thereby enabling a fresh surge of confidence to flow both ways between the two groups. Okay, I can see why he was interested in politics. He clearly has a flair for it. Yeah, I mean, he's good at this. Even though he didn't run for office, I feel like this is something he was passionate about, yeah? Is bringing people together and communicating well and working well together and, you know, catering to both of their interests. And, you know, I see it. He had a lot of skills in that section, yeah? New leaders were appointed within the first 10 months of Commissioner Maxwell's administration. not only for BYU, but also for Ricks College, BYU Idaho, and the church seminaries, institutes, and schools. After the death of President Harold B. Lee in December 1973, Commissioner Maxwell was called as an assistant to the 12 in 1974. In 1976, the First Presidency created an enlarged correlation department at church headquarters, which had the delicate but vital responsibility of assisting the Council of the 12 to coordinate and evaluate all programs of the church. Elder Maxwell was assigned to be the first managing director of the new department. Shortly thereafter, he was relieved of his duties in the church educational system to devote full time to ecclesiastical matters. When the first Quorum of the 70 was organized in October 1976, Elder Maxwell was called as one of the Quorum's 7 presidents. Okay. He served there until his call as a member of the Council of the 12 in July 1981. Okay. So we have assistant to the 12, presidency of the 70, and then Quorum of the 12. I believe that's correct. I will confirm before I put it up, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right. Also, the assistant to the 12, that calling was dissolved in 1976. And so it looks like that's the year that he was sent to become presidency of the 70. Also, they used to call it the First Council of the 70. And it looks like in 1976 is when they changed the name to Presidency of the 70. It's basically the same thing, though. It's very, very similar. So I do use the two terms interchangeably. I am not sure if there was a huge difference in responsibilities between the First Council of the 70 and the Presidency of the 70, but I'm fairly certain that that was the same thing. So it looks like that's when it was changed, when the name was changed. And also, one thing that did change, it was First Council of the 70. It tended to be a lifelong calling, just like Quorum of the 12. But once they changed it to Presidency of the 70, then you could be called and released. And some people were called more than once and released more than once. Yeah? So, yeah, it's interesting how different that is. I was sitting in the congregation at the tabernacle. I'm guessing this is the author speaking directly to the audience, yes? When Elder Maxwell gave one of his first general conference talks. His speaking style was so provocative that it left the brethren among whom I sat visibly breathless. Yeah, he's very eloquent. They were not accustomed to such phrases as, "the living of one protective principle of the gospel is better than 1,000 compensatory governmental programs, which are so often like straightening deck chairs on the Titanic. Or hearts set so much upon the things of this world are hearts so set that they must first be broken." Yeah, he's eloquent to the point of poetry. It's beautiful. Elder Maxwell's public addresses and his 13 books on church themes are nearly all laced with verbal imagery, metaphors, and alliteration. These poetic devices and his sense of the well-turned phrase often make his language closer to poetry than to prose. That's what I said. For instance, "Let us have integrity and not write checks with our tongues which our conduct cannot cash." Yeah? It's very dense. It's very dense. Consider also, the home lies at the headwaters of the stream of civilization, and we must keep it happy and pure, rather than putting all our efforts into reducing the downstream pollution. The LDS leaders who heard him will always remember his thoughtful response to the issue of balancing one's church and professional interests. The LDS choir has its citizenship in the kingdom, but carries his passport into the professional world. Not the other way around. Isn't that beautiful? It's so dense. It's like, it has so many layers. It has layers of meaning. Listen, the LDS scholar has his citizenship in the kingdom, but carries his passport into the professional world. So meaning that you should be more concerned about church things than you are about your work things. And not be more concerned about work than church. Yeah, that's what it's saying. But like the way he says it is so beautiful. In his first general conference talk, Elder Maxwell spoke of his endless appreciation to Jesus Christ for his atonement, realizing that included in the awful arithmetic of the atonement are my sins. Isn't that beautiful? He also reflected his early awareness of what it would mean to be a general authority by quoting a comment from Elder Richard L. Evans, who one day on the way to another plane and another weekend of conferences said gently, "Have you ever gotten homesick on the way to the airport?" Ensign, May 1974, page 112. In a later conference talk paying tribute to the women of the church, he spoke to those who rock a sobbing child without wondering if today's world is passing you by, because you know you hold tomorrow tightly in your arms. That's beautiful. Ensign, May 1978, page 16. One of his conference talks was addressed to those who fully intend someday to begin to believe and or to be active in the church, but not yet. In his tender but piercing invitation, Elder Maxwell said, "If, however, you really do not wish to commit now, then let me warn of the following. Do not look too deeply into the eyes of the pleasure seekers about you, for if you do, you will see a certain sadness and sensuality, and you will hear artificiality in the laughter of licentiousness." Ooh, it's so pretty. Do not look too deeply either into the motives of those who deny God, for you may notice their doubts of doubt. Do not think too much about what you are teaching your family, for what in you is merely casualness about Christianity may in your children become hostility. For what you have not defended, your children may reject angrily. Do not think either about the doctrine that you are a child of God, for if you do, it will be the beginning of belonging. Joshua didn't say choose you next year whom you will serve. He spoke of this day, where there is still daylight, and before the darkness becomes more and more normal. Ensign, November 1974, page 12-13. Elder Maxwell's tendency to compress meaning and feeling into compact verbal images reflects a mental quickness that expresses itself in other ways. Ken Gardner, a chairman of the Board of Regents in the Utah higher education system, says he has never known anyone as prompt as Neal Maxwell to return phone calls, answer letters, or follow up on assignments. Well, good for him. This responsiveness, combined with his judgment and his native intelligence, have made it easy for the regents, the presidency of the First Quorum of the 70, and other groups to look at him both as thoughtful leader and as a reliable colleague who does his homework. All right, let's take a pause here, take a deep breath. Whew. The language, it's so beautiful. Okay, so moving on, let's take a look at some pictures. So, Elder Maxwell, the Canadian missionary following 2 years of World War II Army service, including fighting in Okinawa. Canadian missionary. Okay, I got it. Right, mid-1950s in Washington, D.C., amidst early fatherhood while serving as U.S. Senatorial Legislative Assistant after 1952 university graduation. Okay. Below, wedding day, November 22nd, 1950, in front of Salt Lake Temple with his bride, Colleen Hinckley. He's related to the Hinckleys? Here, let me look that up. Oh, she's his first cousin. Okay, distantly. Like that, I don't consider first cousins like that closely related. Okay. But they haven't talked about his wife yet, so I was not aware of this. But yeah, okay. So he was related to Gordon B. Hinckley, but only relatively distantly. I wouldn't consider that a close relationship. All right. Here's another picture, early 1960s, as Bishop of the University's 6th Ward with bishopric, serving students at University of Utah, where he joined administrative staff in 1956. And there he is on the far right. Yeah? All right. Okay, we're caught up on pictures, so let's keep going. With some of these qualities in mind, former NASA director and former University of Utah president James Fletcher, for whom Elder Maxwell worked several years, considers him one of the most competent administrators he has known. In addition, even in such detail work as budgets or the statistics in the correlation evaluation report, he retains a broad strategic perspective that is awake to the broad implications of the issue at hand. When a staff aide makes a report to him, Elder Maxwell is usually asking questions within the first few minutes of the report about the bottom line, implications he detects. He is so well read and alert that his son Corey cannot remember ever having surprised his father with a question. Yeah, well, I mean, I could see that. In addition, Corey recalls as a youth he didn't use a dictionary very well because it was so easy to ask his dad the meaning of any word he encountered. See? Smart people. Yeah. Even though Elder Maxwell may be best known among the general membership of the church for his distinctive use of language, a closer look, even at his sermons, reveals a more substantive dimension. His conference talk addressed to inactive members carries between its eloquent lines a sense of empathy for the inactive person that is as kind as it is disarming. It shows that he understands them. His conference talk to the women of the church similarly reflects an honest sensitivity to the questions and needs of contemporary LDS women. It shows that he understands them. His entire experience with those in the academic community shows not only that he understands them, but that he is open, approachable, and neither threatening nor threatened by the most difficult concerns of both LDS and non-LDS scholars. His experience with the political community has also built bridges of trust and communication that make it very natural for political leaders in both parties, in Utah and elsewhere, to know that in Neal Maxwell they have an understanding ear. I like this. This is all very, very positive, yeah? As he talks and writes to active church members, Elder Maxwell's innate sense of empathy is apparent. One of his oft-repeated themes is to reassure those buffeted by false insecurity who, through laboring devotedly in the kingdom, have recurring feelings of falling forever short. His understanding of the very human needs of new converts was demonstrated by a conference talk entitled "The Net Gathers of Every Kind." Ensign, November 1980, page 14, in which he said, "If, with quiet heroism, they can make their way across the border into belief, surely we can cross a crowded foyer to extend the hand of fellowship." I love that. That's beautiful. The way he expresses himself is so beautiful. Not surprisingly, the members of Elder Maxwell's family have also been blessed by his sensitivity. He has always been good to do with his children the things that they hoped he would, from reading with them to playing games and taking regular family vacations. Even with all the children married, it is still a Maxwell family tradition to spend some vacation time together each year. At these outings, Elder Maxwell continues to be the family tennis champion, against what is reported to be some very stiff competition. He also has lunch regularly with his son and sons-in-law, and participates in a long-standing gospel study group with his parents' family. I like that. As a father, Neal Maxwell has understood Elder Marvin J. Ashton's observation that a 12-year-old boy doesn't so much want you to say you love him, he just wants you to play football with him. But in addition, one of the Maxwell children recalls the evening when her father sat down with her for a quiet personal talk, in which Elder Maxwell, in love and simple language, bore his testimony. She also recalls with some tenderness the times her father has given her father's blessings. Another remembers when his father called him from a distant city to ask such perceptive questions and to give such needed counsel that the influence of inspiration was unmistakable. Elder Maxwell's family are also among his most trusted reviewers when he needs advice on an early draft of a book or a speech. Because of the high level of mutual trust, family members have been respectful but straightforward in trying to help. Though they appreciate their father's speaking style, they do not hesitate to remind him occasionally that when he first proposed marriage to Sister Maxwell, he used such big words and talked so fast that she was not completely sure she understood him. Yeah, talk to the simple people too, you know? Other personal moments in Elder Maxwell's relationships with people illustrate the way of his genuine concerns for the needs of others, touches and blesses individual lives. There is the father, moved that one of the brethren would be anxious to put the name of a terribly sick 5-year-old on a special prayer roll. The well-educated new convert, surprised at a special dinner in his honor in the Maxwell home. The state legislator, worrying that if he dare even broach a vexing church and state problem, reassured with both candor and confidentiality that he has been heard and understood. The talented single woman with serious professional aspirations, wondering where she fits in a family-oriented church, encouraged beyond her expectations by the counsel of one who truly appreciates those who make wise career choices, even though they cannot now have the most choice career. The educated may think he is approachable because he is an educator, The new converts and those interested in social issues may sense in him a special interest in their concerns. The political leaders may think he understands the world because of his background in it. His family may feel he is an unusually devoted father, and in a sense, they are all correct. But cutting through all the dimensions of Neal Maxwell's broad range of interests is a core quality of empathy that consistently manifests itself, regardless of other personalities or subject matter. With the abundant help of heaven, he has developed the spiritual gift of an understanding heart, the gift of charity. Okay, I'm going to pause there for a moment again, because we have a few more pictures. So, late 1960s in Chalk Talk with State Legislative Committee. His civic work has included chairman of Utah Constitutional Revision Committee, United Fund Charity chairman, regional editor of National Educational Television. Okay. Below, 1963, as Dean of Students, here with University of Utah president, staff, and supporters, where for 15 years, the majority of his professional career, he served as political science professor, dean, assistant to the president, secretary to the Board of Regents, and vice president in 2 assignments. And bottom, March 1973, while a regional representative and church commissioner of education in videotape training for church leaders from 5 regions. Okay. I like the picture of the thoughtful person. I think it's funny. It looks kind of like him, you know. It's just funny to me that it's, you know, it looks so similar. Anyway, one reason for Elder Maxwell's personal sensitivity is the example of his wife, Colleen Hinckley Maxwell. He has often said that he married up spiritually. That's sweet, yeah? Sister Maxwell is innately alert to the hopes, the concerns, and the feelings of others, totally without regard to their role or status. The Maxwells have 4 children, all of whom are now married. I was wondering about that. I was wondering if they were going to mention them. So, Becky, Corey, Nancy, and Jane. So 3 girls and a boy? Unless Corey's also a girl. I'm assuming that's a boy's name. One of the children remembers that their mother's charitable instincts were deep and constant. She is a wonderful cook, but so often the smell of fresh bread in the kitchen after school would come from the loaves baked to be given to someone else. Oh, nice! Sunday dinner was seldom for the family alone, as those in need of friendship were always invited in. Well, that is sweet of her. She's always championed the underdog, says her husband. The home in which Elder Maxwell grew up was blessed with a similar atmosphere. His mother and father were always looking out for the neighbors. After his mission, it was common for converts and other of the mission field to be invited into the Maxwell home, almost as members of the family. Elder Maxwell describes his parents and his wife as being among that critical mass of decent people who hold neighborhoods together, seemingly ordinary people doing extraordinary things. One of his sisters has also worked as a public school teacher despite being legally blind. Okay, his admiration and appreciation for her have added to his ability to sense others' needs and viewpoints. Okay, the mentioning of the sister was slightly irrelevant, yes? I guess the point is that, you know, that she learned that spirit from her family. Okay, now, the thing is, a lot of people do not understand blindness. Legally blind means that your eyesight is too poor to drive a car. That's what it means. So just because you are legally blind does not make you so blind that you can't do anything. Yeah? She could probably still read large print books. Yeah? And if you can still read large print books, I mean, just, you know, legally blind, then you probably could teach school. I mean, I don't see any reason why you couldn't. The only difference is that you might have difficulties reading if a student writes very small, but like if you have a pretty high-powered magnifying glass, that should actually take care of that. Yeah? As long as you are able to magnify it large enough for you to read. So I don't really see this teaching school as a legally blind person as being something concerning, or even super admirable. Like, what do you want her to do? You know, it sounds like she was a good teacher. She came from a family of people who also teach. So I don't really see that as by itself something like, even that you would say, wow, that's amazing. I would say, good for her. Yeah? But I wouldn't say that, wow, that's amazing. But I would also say good for her if she wasn't blind and teaching, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. I understand that it is an accomplishment, and with a few accommodations, there's absolutely doable for people who are legally blind. Yes? Yeah. So many people think you can't use the word blind unless you cannot see at all. That is not correct. Anyone legally blind sees too poorly to be allowed to drive is allowed to use the term. So, just because someone is blind does not mean that they cannot see at all. A lot of them have residual vision, and it sounded like she has quite a bit of residual vision. And yeah, there's absolutely no reason why she couldn't teach school. Yeah? Anyways, like, some can still see color and everything. Like, it depends on how bad your eyesight is. Yeah? And as long as you can see well enough to drive, you are not considered blind. But as soon as your eyesight is too poor, you are considered blind. Yes? So, I am not blind, but I know people who are. Anyways, moving on. One of my neighbors is blind. All right. Elder Maxwell has been touched by the example of President Spencer W. Kimball. Part of what makes President Kimball so special, observed Elder Maxwell, is that he has no idea how special he really is. He recalls the time President Kimball was in the hospital as a patient, when the nurses kept having to go find him in other rooms, where he had gone to visit the sick. That's so cute. Watching President Kimball has inspired Elder Maxwell to spend more time consoling those confined to hospitals. Well, good for him. Elder Maxwell has also been stirred by President Kimball's great sense of selfless obligation to the Lord, his people, and his work. He has also enjoyed the subtle humor in President Kimball's counsel. On one occasion, President Kimball spoke for the First Presidency in giving a certain difficult assignment to Elder Maxwell and to Elder James E. Faust. Elder Maxwell responded, "President Kimball, surely you can find better men than the two of us for such a challenging task." With a gentle smile, President Kimball replied, Well, we're looking for two better men. Would you two mind going ahead with the job?" That's great. It's a great response. Love it. There is now a sense of theological significance in the feelings that have grown inside Elder Maxwell over the years about reaching out to others. He watches President Kimball spend and re-spend his energy, somehow completely unconcerned about his own needs. He remembers that President Harold B. Lee once recalled a spiritual experience through which he became aware that, as an apostle, it was his duty to learn to love every person on the face of the earth. And then he reads 2 Nephi 31:20. Wherefore, you must press forward with a steadfastness in Christ, having a perfect brightness of hope and a love of God and of all men. The message is overwhelming, but for Elder Neal A. Maxwell, the message of charity resonates into the very core of his soul. He has long nourished an inborn sense of compassion, but now finds it everlastingly expanded by the call of the holy apostleship. Neal Maxwell was not called to the sacred service merely because of his intellect or administrative skill. These things are helpful, but when it comes time to fill a vacancy among the 12, the inquiry is of a spiritual order. Wherefore, of these men which have accompanied us, must one be ordained to be a witness with us of his resurrection. Sorry, that language is very strange, but I know it's biblical, but it's hard to read. And they prayed and said, Thou, Lord, which knowest the hearts of all men, shew whither thou hast chosen, that he may take part of this ministry and apostleship. Acts 1:21-25. Several years before the present-day prophets and apostles had undertaken this same search to fill the vacancy in the 12, created by the call of Elder Gordon B. Hinckley to serve in the First Presidency, Elder Maxwell has made clear his own priorities. My testimony, he wrote in 1975, came in 3 ways. Early in life came the witness of the Spirit, then the intellectual conversion, and then the experiential conversion. The witness of the Spirit is more sure, but the other witnesses corroborate increasingly the relevancy of the gospel for our time. I like it. There have been impressive flashes along the path of Neal Maxwell's life, but more important is the fundamental direction that path has taken. In the quiet shadows, the turns, the forks in the road, in sunshine and in shade, with quick footsteps and slow, he has become a worthy vessel to receive true charity, this love which he hath bestowed upon all who are true followers of his Son, Jesus Christ. Moroni 7:48. Bruce C. Hafen is president of Ricks College, Rexburg, Idaho, and teaches Sunday school in his ward. Okay, I'm pretty sure he was in General Authority 70 as well, though. All right, here's one last picture. Elder and Sister Maxwell with their 4 married children, spouses, and 7 grandchildren. Yeah, it's a lot when you get everybody together, you know? Yeah, very nice. I liked that. That was really fun. I liked that. But you see why I mentioned his wordsmithing specifically, because I feel like that's what he was most known for. Yeah. Anyway, obviously, we did not get a full picture, since that was written in 1982, is that right? Yeah, 82. And he lived until 2004. So we have some pretty big gaps. Also, they said almost nothing about his courtship, marriage, and children, except that he had 4 children. And that they like to ask him the definition of words so they didn't have to look them up in the dictionary. Yeah, like, I don't feel like that's very thorough. So let's see if the Wikipedia article can be more thorough. Also, I would be interested to see if there's anything at all controversial or if he's just very unproblematic. Yeah, because so far he sounds unproblematic, and I hope that that's the case, but you never know. All right, so Neal Ash Maxwell, July 6, 1926 to July 21st, 2004, was an American scholar, educator, and religious leader who served as a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church, from 1981 until his death in 2004. Life and career. Maxwell was born on July 6, 1926 in Salt Lake City, Utah, to Clarence Maxwell and Emma Ash. After graduating from Granite High School in 1944, at the height of World War II, Maxwell enlisted in the United States Army. He served in the 77th Division and saw action in the Battle of Okinawa. That's crazy. Like, yeah, so many of them did, but not all of them actually saw action, so he did, apparently. After the war, Maxwell served for 2 years as an LDS church missionary in Canada. While pursuing an undergraduate education at the University of Utah before leaving on his mission, Maxwell met Colleen Hinckley, 1928 to 2016. After Maxwell returned from his mission, he resumed courting Colleen, and they were married in the Salt Lake Temple on November 22, 1950. They became parents of 4 children and had 24 grandchildren. Okay, so they eventually had 24. The picture we saw, they only had 7. So, yeah, time marches on and people have more children, yeah. Maxwell earned bachelor's and master's degrees in political science from the University of Utah. From 1952 to 1956, he worked in Washington, D.C. for the government, and then as a legislative assistant to Senator Wallace F. Bennett. Worked for the government. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, in what capacity? You know what I mean? Like, that's very vague. Maxwell was a professor of political science at the University of Utah. He also held many administrative roles at the university. He first joined the university staff as Assistant Director of Public Relations in 1956. In 1958, he became assistant to the president. In 1961, he was secretary to the Board of Trustees, followed by Dean of Students in 1962, and later vice president for Planning and Public Affairs. In 1967, he became executive vice president of the University of Utah. Yeah, so he was in leadership, of the university. LDS Church Service. From 1959 to 1962, Maxwell served as Bishop of Salt Lake City's University 6th Ward. He was a member of the General Board of the YMMIA, so that's Young Men's Mutual Improvement Association, and a member of the Adult Correlation Committee for the next 5 years. In 1967, Maxwell was called to be one of the first 69 regional representatives. Yeah, they mentioned that. I still don't know what it means exactly, in this capacity, I mean. From 1970 to 1976, he served as the 10th Commissioner of Church Education, overseeing the church educational system. Under his direction, the system received its current name. CES, Church Educational System. Maxwell began serving as an LDS General Authority in 1974 when he was called as an assistant to the Quorum of the 12. In 1976, Maxwell became one of the 7 presidents of the 70, when the calling of assistants to the 12 was eliminated. Maxwell was ordained an apostle by N. Eldon Tanner on July 23, 1981, after Gordon B. Hinckley became a counselor in the first presidency. He was sustained as a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles on October 3rd, 1981. Okay, so he was actually ordained to the apostleship and brought into the quorum before he was sustained, is what I'm understanding. I don't think there's anything specifically wrong with that, because they only do the sustainings twice a year, so they have to just wait till the next one, you know. Among his assignments was to preside over the organization of new stakes of the church. One of the more notable was the Aba Nigeria stake in 1988, with David W. Eka called as president. This was the first stake in the church staffed entirely by people of African descent. Yay! 1988, yeah, was the first time there was a stake, that had all of their leadership be native people of the area, in Africa. That was the biggest thing, because it hadn't been that long that they were allowed to have the priesthood. Crazy. Maxwell wrote approximately 30 books. Why did it say approximately? Why don't you just say the exact number? Concerning religion, and authored numerous articles on political and government for local, professional, and national publications. He was well known for his extensive vocabulary and elegant style of speaking and writing. His highly alliterative talks have always presented a great challenge to translators. Yes, they have. During one LDS General Conference, the translators had categorized each of the talks to be given into 5 levels of difficulty. All of the talks were assigned levels 1 to 4, except Maxwell's. His talk was alone at level 5. Commenting on his speaking and writing styles at Maxwell's funeral, Church President Gordon B. Hinckley said, "I know of no other man who spoke in such an interesting and distinct manner. His genius was the product of diligence. He was a perfectionist determined to exact from every phrase and sentence vivid imagery that brought the gospel to life. Each talk was a masterpiece. Each book was a work of art. I think we shall not see one like him again." Yeah, that's kind of true. Maxwell received an honorary Doctor of Laws degree from the University of Utah, an honorary Doctor of Letters degree from Westminster College, Salt Lake City, an honorary Doctor of Laws degree from Brigham Young University, Provo, Utah, an honorary Doctor of Humanities degree from Utah State University, Logan, Utah, an honorary degree from Ricks College, Rexburg, Idaho, and an honorary degree from Salt Lake Community College. It's like they don't want to be left out. That's crazy. Like, he got all these honorary degrees, all from Utah universities, though. That is interesting. I guess he's a touch niche, yeah? The University of Utah established the Neal A. Maxwell Presidential Endowed Chair in Political Theory, Public Policy, and Public Service in the fall of 1998. Nice. Maxwell's business career included serving as a director of several business firms, including Quaystar, I don't know how to pronounce that, Quaystar Corporation, Quaystar Pipeline, and Deseret News Publishing Company. Okay, director of several, okay. He was also active in public service, including service as chairman of the Utah Constitutional Revision Commission. Yeah, they mentioned that. I'm going to go back to this Quaystar thing. Okay, pipeline, that implies oil to me. So let me just look really quickly. Company based in New Hope, Pennsylvania, manufactures precision optical devices for consumer, industrial, aerospace, and military markets. Okay, my bad. I did not know that. So, there you go. All right. Okay, those are decent places to work for then. You know, like places that make telescopes. Yeah, cool. Pipeline, I'm not sure what that is exactly, but yeah, Deseret News Publishing Company. Yeah, we all are familiar with that one. Okay, yeah, these all seem pretty up and up. You know, there's nothing shady about that. Maxwell received the Liberty Bell Award from the Utah State Bar in 1967 for public service. Why did the Utah State Bar have anything to do? Because don't they oversee lawyers? He's not a lawyer. In 1973, the Institute of Government Service at BYU named him Public Administrator of the Year. Okay, that's interesting. I wonder why BYU, since he worked at the University of Utah, but whatever. All right. Maxwell died in Salt Lake City from leukemia. He was originally diagnosed with leukemia in 1996, 8 years before his death. So he was sick a very long time. Poor guy. It's not fun to be sick that long, yeah? An estimated 4,000 people attended the funeral in the Tabernacle or via video in the Salt Lake Assembly Hall or Joseph Smith Memorial Building. He was buried at Salt Lake City Cemetery. According to Hinckley, Maxwell accomplished more in these last 8 years than most men do in a lifetime. With the death, 10 days later, a fellow apostle, David B. Haight, the vacancies created in the Quorum of the 12 were filled by Dieter F. Uchtdorf and David A. Bednar. I very distinctly remember that. Maxwell was survived by his wife, Colleen, 4 children, 24 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. Very nice. The BYU Institute for the Study and Preservation of Ancient Religious Texts was renamed the Neal A. Maxwell Institute for Religious Scholarship after Maxwell's death. Well, that's interesting, because I don't think he was specifically a religious scholar, but I do understand why they would think that, since his talks were always very doctrinal. I'll bet a lot of his books were as well. Okay, publications. They said 30, yeah? Let's see. All right, Neal A. Maxwell, 1967, A More Excellent Way, Essays on Leadership for Latter-day Saints. Okay, makes sense. 1970, For the Power is in Them, Mormon Musings. Okay, I don't know what that's about, to be honest. 1972, A Time to Choose. Okay. 1973, The Smallest Part. I don't know what that means either. 1974, That My Family Should Partake. 1975, Of One Heart, The Glory of the City of Enoch. Okay, and then it was republished a couple of times. The last one being renamed the Enoch Letters. Okay. 1976, Deposition of a Disciple. I thought it was disposition at first. Deposition of a Disciple. 1977, Wherefore Ye Must Press Forward. 1978, Things as They Really Are. 1979, All These Things Shall Give the Experience. 1981, Notwithstanding My Weakness. 1982, We Will Prove Them Herewith. 1983, Plain and Precious Things. 1984, We Talk of Christ, We Rejoice in Christ. 1985, Sermons Not Spoken. 1986, But for a Small Moment. 1987, Meek and Lowly. 1990, Wonderful Flood of Light. 1990, again, Of One Heart, Look Back at Sodom. 1991, Men and Women of Christ. 1991, Even as I Am. 1992, That Ye May Believe. 1994, Lord Increase Our Faith. 1997, Women of Faith. 2000, The Collected Works of Neal A. Maxwell. That wasn't written by him, though. 2001, Neal A. Maxwell Quote Book. 2001, The Promise of Discipleship. I think I have that book, but I don't think I've read it. I really should read it. There you go. 2002, If Thou Endure It Well. 2002, Not My Will But Thine. 2002, One More Strain of Praise. Oh, I've heard of that. I haven't read it, though. 2003, The Precious Promise, A Message for Women. 2003, Whom the Lord Loveth, The Journey of Discipleship. And 2004, probably published posthumously, Moving in His Majesty and Power. Wonderful. That's a lot. That's a lot of very doctrinal books, so I get why they did like the religious education after him. All right, further reading. Bruce C. Hafen, February 1982, Elder Neal A. Maxwell and Understanding Heart, which we just read. Bruce C. Hafen, 2002, A Disciple's Life, the biography of Neal A. Maxwell. I did not know that he wrote his actual biography. Also in 2002, that was before his death. So that's really interesting too. Carol Mikita, July 27, 2004, Funeral Services for Elder Neal A. Maxwell. Okay. Elder Neal A. Maxwell, Assistant to the Council of 12, Ensign, May 1974. Okay. I'm surprised there wasn't anything from later than that, but I guess all they needed about his death was like some points of like, you know, some facts. Where, when, and exactly how, that kind of thing. All right. Well, I really loved that. I really, really loved that. I think that was beautiful, and I think that I'll put a picture of Utah, University of Utah in the background, because I think that's where he spent most of his time. Yeah. Also, maybe some books of his on the thumbnail. Anyways, I think that was wonderful. It was beautiful, and I really admire him as a person, and I love his quotes as well. He's very quotable. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video today. I really loved Neal A. Maxwell. Wonderful person. Should listen to his talks again. Anyway, if you liked the video, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.